get started pretty quickly. Okay, we are going to get started. I'm going to come up off of a little bit of pause. Good evening, good evening, good evening to those of you that are there. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I should turn my air conditioner off. I always forget that. If it's interference, y'all let me know and I will do my best. But I will be stopping talking anyway very soon. So welcome. Some of you might be new here. My name is Dior St. Hilaire and I currently chair the Bronx SWAB. The SWAB is a solid waste advisory board. And there are other ones that exist around the city. And essentially what we do is we help to inform and educate residents as well as the Borough President's Office around key zero waste initiatives. And so today we're going to be talking about EPR, which is a really controversial bill, one that is necessary though, and I think has gone through many different iterations and many different conversations and topics. And we've covered some stuff here in the SWAB meetings before. But I do want to take this time before we jump into any sort of presentation to allow members to introduce themselves. And when I say members, I mean just people attending right now. But if you can introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you are, what brings you to the Bronx SWAB, and what's the biggest issue that you would like to see addressed as it relates to sanitation in this borough. Some people may be guests here that may not have a direct way to answer that for the Bronx, but that's fine. What brings you to waste work in general would be great. So just so that we know who we have on the line. And so I'm excited about this conversation today because when I first heard about EPR, my very first introduction to it, I immediately was suspicious of it. While it felt like it had really great intentions, I had a lot of questions and a lot of interrogating questions in order to make sure that this wasn't just another way for corporations to pollute and just control the ways in which they did it. So I really am excited today to be able to have Rhonda of the Brooklyn SWAB and Matt of the Manhattan SWAB to talk a little bit more about EPR. And so again, don't be shy in the chat. Again, it's nice to know who was here and why you're here and all of the work that you would like to see happen. But we're going to jump into it. I will happily share my screen if that makes it easier to go through. And before that, if you want to introduce yourselves, that would be great. And really quickly before you do that, is there anyone here that would like to take a moment to amplify any Bronx waste issues that you are currently experiencing so that we can get our record of it and we can follow up with you about ways in which we can support you moving through it? So I'll take a little bit of time that you can either put it in the chat or feel free to come off of mute and tell us what's bugging you. What's bugging you about Bronx Basura? Let's boogie down Basura. Okay, great. I know that I know there's something bugging you, but it's cool if you don't want to share right now in this moment. That's totally fine. So if you two could just introduce yourselves, and then we'll hop into the presentation.
Yeah, hi. So can you all hear me?
Yeah, you're a little low.
Low?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So I'm Matt Sabello, chair of the Manhattan SWAB, and I'm glad to be here and talk about EPR. I'll just turn it over to Rhonda.
I'm Rhonda with the Brooklyn SWAB, and I'm happy to be here to talk about EPR too. I'm also happy that I feel better after getting a positive COVID diagnosis.
Always grateful for the healing. Wonderful. So thank you for all of you putting your information in the chat on who you are. I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to hop into it. We're going to learn a little bit about EPR. I think we'll have a little bit of time also to learn just about plastic in general, and kind of following. We're going to watch a little 4-minute clip about the story of plastic, because I think it's very important for us to ground ourselves in really just understanding how we even got here, and what possibilities can look like in the future. So imagining that is super important. So let me share my screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we are going to hop into what is happening here. So before we hop into the video, if you all want to kick us off on why this is a problem, why does it suck, why are we here, and what else are they trying to do?
Us kick you off on that? Okay, so we know plastic litter is a problem, and plastic litter goes into our oceans because we all know about the combined sewer overflow system, which is in over 700 cities in the country, but definitely in the Manhattan and the 5 boroughs. We have, so that means when it rains more than a tenth of an inch, is that right? A tenth of an inch per hour.
Or a quarter of an inch in any given period.
When it rains that hard, like this afternoon, it rained really hard. So that means that all of the water that goes into the streets, that rains into our streets, goes down the drains, stuff goes down the drains. And that combines with the wastewater from our houses and businesses and stuff like that. And it's all processed together. But because our system has grown so quickly, and we haven't been able to keep up with updating our system quickly enough, all of everything that overflows goes out into the water, out into the ocean, out into the waterways nearby. There are, and that's not the only way that our plastic waste and our litter in general gets out into the oceans, but it does get into the oceans. It's a problem for sea animals, and that's really sad, but it's also a problem. It's a problem for us too, because it breaks up into microplastics, and microplastics are in all of us. You know, they're in our blood, they're in our lungs. Microplastics have been found on the fetal and maternal sides of the placenta. It's everybody's problem. It's not just somebody else's problem. It's not just a problem of the overburdened communities, which it really is. It is a big problem. And because plastics are made to be used for an average of 7 minutes, or an average of 7 minutes, single-use plastics, they're made to be trash. And as you know, in the Bronx, where you have an inordinate amount of waste transfer stations, which is basically where our garbage goes before it leaves the city, because we don't have any dumps in the city anymore. So it goes to waste transfer stations, and that means extra truck traffic in the South Bronx and certain neighborhoods in Queens and North Brooklyn. So, Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's good.
And I like that Dior wrote NIMBY as a problem in environmental justice communities, because that has been the problem. People say, oh, well, just put it in somebody else's neighborhood and it won't be my problem. But as I just detailed, it it is everybody's problem. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I'll say that, you know, and we'll actually see a slide a little bit later that kind of maps out the different transfer stations and facilities that we do have in the Bronx. But one of the things that I'll point out is that why this matters and why this is such a big deal is because this kind of stuff goes into our waterways. And, you know, as we know, there's always this effort to clean up our waterways so that we can use them and that the young people have access to kayaking and getting out there on the river. And I think it's beautiful. A lot of work that happens as well with Rocking the Boat, as well as at Brook Park Garden. And I think, you know, I didn't actually grow up with access to that. I didn't grow up with the idea of doing something like that. So the fact that has been all this work that is going around giving access to waterfronts to our young people in this fight is really important. So this is a problem because the plastic pollution, as we know, our waterways are one of the systems that are compromised as a result of just having this particular substance in our environment. So I'll play this little video really quickly, just because I think it breaks down really nicely, just to conceptualize the way that we use it. I think for some of us, it may be such a simple thing, right? Just getting something out of the discount store. We don't think twice about it, or just, you know, purchasing or buying something for our loved ones or getting a gift, and we don't think about it, right? Because again, this is the packaging that we are given. We don't necessarily have a choice on what it looks like. So we participate in it in a way that we don't necessarily, like, again, we don't have options, we don't have choices. And so understanding really just plastic in general, I think will be helpful for us to kind of get our brains around, even wanting to engage creative ways and different ways of doing it. And, you know, one thing I'll say before I play the video is Miranda of Eco Bronx, I'm not sure if she's on the line yet, but does a great job of really helping us to imagine new ways of thinking about how we can engage with the reuse lifestyle that looks like us eliminating and reducing our relationship with plastic.
You've probably heard about a giant trash island in the ocean, or that poor sea turtle and the straw. Maybe you've even heard how plastic is being found inside the fish we eat. The plastic crisis gets a lot of attention, but the headlines usually focus on the plastic that ends up in the environment. And that's just part of the story. The truth is, plastic has a whole life cycle that's hidden from view, one that harms people and the planet from start to finish. Let's start at the beginning. Plastic is made from fossil fuels like oil or fracked natural gas. Extracting those fossil fuels and turning them into plastics creates a lot of pollution. Pollution that most often affects marginalized communities nearby. As we've gotten better about using less oil and gas to power our lives, the fossil fuel industry found a lifeline in plastics. In fact, oil and gas companies are doubling down on plastic production, with plans to build or expand over 300 petrochemical plants in the US alone by 2025. But these companies already produce more plastic than we can use. So where's all that plastic going? A lot of it's flowing into new markets, in places like Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Because more than any other product category, plastic isn't driven by the demand for it, but by the supply. Corporations like Unilever, Nestle, and Procter & Gamble are aggressively marketing single-use plastic products around the world. These companies go to places like Indonesia, where I live, and push their products onto communities that just aren't prepared to deal with all that plastic. Maybe they're used to using natural packaging. Maybe they live on a tiny island without a system of waste collection. And on top of that, countries in the global north are shipping their own plastic waste into these countries too. When you add that all up, it's no wonder so much of this plastic ends up in the environment. And globally, that's where a whopping 32% of plastic packaging ends up. 40% goes to a landfill, where plastic just piles up for future generations to deal with. And 14% is incinerated. Incineration is a nasty business, producing toxic smoke and fly ash. These super expensive facilities depend on plastic to burn everything else. It is oil and gas after all. So they want to see more plastic, not less. Then there's recycling. Unfortunately, it's not the solution that many people think it is. Just 14% of plastic packaging gets recycled, and only 2% is effectively recycled, meaning it becomes something as useful as before. The rest is downcycled into something worse. And most recycled plastic is only recycled once, before ending up in landfills, incinerators, or the environment anyway. So it turns out that we can't burn, bury, or recycle our way out of this problem. And we can't just scoop all that plastic out of the environment either. That's like trying to bail out a bathtub with a teaspoon while the tap is on full blast. So how about we turn off the tap by shutting down the plastic machine? That means passing policies that create systemic change. Like phasing out the single-use plastics that pollute the most, ending the fossil fuel subsidies that are fueling big plastic, and holding companies responsible for the plastic waste they create. That's how we can achieve our vision of a zero-waste future, where all of our products and packaging can be reused or repaired, effectively recycled, or composted, and ultimately how we create a sustainable, circular economy that works for both people and the planet. Visit storyofplastic.org.
So that's just a little nice quick overview of plastic. I'll stop and just say, does anybody have any immediate questions that you would like answered? You can either put them in the chat. I'm all down for chat questions. I actually love chat questions because we can get to them as we're continuing moving the show along the road. So I was asking if we could hear a little bit more about what's on the horizon to make more plastic as we're doing our best to reduce it.
Well, Matt, maybe you know the statistics on this, but the fossil fuel industry has invested, God, this is terrible. It's, our organization, Cafeteria Culture that I work for, made a movie called Microplastic Madness, which you guys should screen it with the Bronx SWAB. You're welcome to do that. Just let us know if you want to see it. It's about students in New York City who are learning about the plastic problem, and then they do things about it. It's really exciting and empowering. They've invested money to re-up and to expand their fracking. So you all heard about natural gas fracking, that one of the byproducts from that, ethylene, they make these cracker plants, ethylene cracker plants, and those they use those, and they make the pellets for plastic, to make single-use plastic products. Oh yeah.
I mean, so that's a very important point. I mean, I think that it's important for us to realize that there are three primary groups that make money from this, actually four, from this cycle. So the petrochemical companies, when we talk about the cracking plants, these cracking plants are actually bolted onto fracking sites. So they can produce these pellets on site at the area where they extract the methane from the ground. So the petrochemical, it's a great way, it's an ancillary product, it's very profitable, it's a great way to make money. The second group are the manufacturers of the actual plastic containers themselves. Like, for example, with expanded polystyrene, for example, that would be the DART Corporation, which is an integrated company that receives revenue from every part of the supply chain, from production to distribution to retail. So the manufacturers of the actual manufacturers of the containers make quite a bit of money. But then one of the real beneficiaries, number three, would be the food companies, or any company that packages a product or service in plastic, because it's a almost costless way of delivering product. And so it's extremely profitable for L'Oreal or Revlon or Johnson & Johnson or Nabisco to package their products in something that costs them virtually nothing. And finally, perversely enough, companies like Covanta, who or Wheelabrator, or Waste Management, I think Waste Management may not have incineration facilities, but these waste to energy plants are they're profitable, and burning plastic is extremely energy rich. It's free, and if they could get 100% plastic to burn, it'd be super great. So, and then finally, there's a new a fifth party that may participate in this, and it's advanced recyclers who claim to take raw plastics of any kind and turn them into kerosene, a low sulfur diesel, and then raw plastic material for recycling. And this is a technology that's not proven to work anywhere, yet they can raise hundreds of millions of dollars to build plants in underserved communities, overburdened communities. And so far, there isn't really an example of one of these plants that have worked long term. So there's a very strong financial incentive all the way across the board to continue this system.
Exactly.
You've probably heard about a
Going to move us to the, oh, that's what we're doing now here. All right, I was gonna move us to the next slide. If we could talk a little bit about what EPR is, right? Let's just do a nice basic introduction for people who this is the very first time they're touching it in this way. Maybe they've heard about it, but haven't dug too deep in it. Maybe they know about it and know bad EPR, right? So can we talk a little bit about, let's just talk about first what it is, right? Before we get into what's bad EPR, what's good EPR look like. Let's just talk about what is EPR.
The main thing that EPR is called extended producer responsibility. So it's extending the responsibility of end of life management to the producers. So most of the EPR legislation that's come out has been highly favorable to the producers, even though it seems like we're gonna really just all your suspicions, Dior, were exactly what was going on to begin with. And so there have been a lot of people pushing back on that and trying to make people take a second look at it, because not only is bad EPR, I'm sorry, I'm talking about good and bad, but not only is bad EPR not going to get us where we want to be, but it's also going to set us back a lot. So what good EPR should do is, first of all, reduce packaging, because as Miranda mentioned in the chat, she's talking about Plastic Alley, and you may be also, it makes me think about Cancer Alley, where they're producing the packaging, the plastic to begin with, all of those refineries and stuff. So that's already a terrible thing when you're producing it, producing the plastic. And so it's not just end of life management that's a problem. So reducing the amount of packaging is what we just have to do to begin with. Just make less of it. It's like, this is where they said in the movie, we're turning off the tap. Then it has to eliminate toxics in packaging. That there are, without mentioning the specific toxics that need to be eliminated in the bill up front. I mean, your legislators, please legislate. Let's put the guardrails on. Why don't you pull up your big boy pants and start to legislate. And then you've got to keep what is successful in play. So bad EPR was trying to eliminate the bottle bill, trying to eventually eliminate the bottle bill, which has about a 70 to 80% capture rate of those materials, whereas regular recycling, where it's as convenient as anything in New York City, what do we have? About a 15% capture rate of our recyclables. Because why? Because I study this issue all the time, and sometimes I put stuff in the wrong bin, or it's just hard. You have to be a garbologist to really know. Also, no burning plastics. As Matt said, it's often called advanced recycling or pyrolysis. They don't want to call it that anymore because they don't want you to think it's burning when it actually is. So there's a new way of supposedly recycling plastic, but it doesn't work. It's neither feasible on a health level, nor is it feasible on an economic scale. It can't. It's not sustainable. And then it needs strong oversight and accountability. It needs to have government and someone watching it. They can't police themselves, because this problem with plastic that we saw in the movie that we know about became a problem with producers in charge of what they were going to do. And then, of course, taxpayer relief. So that's so that they will pay for certain materials. They pay higher for materials that are less recyclable than they pay for materials that are more recyclable and reusable, etc. Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I think that last point really captures the concept fully. So the idea is somehow we're going to automagically make producers of plastic packaging. And that could be a food company, a packaging company, it could be many different entities in that supply chain that we described to you, responsible for the end life management of that packaging material, whether it's plastic, paper, glass, metal, right? But plastics is really where we're focusing for the moment for a lot of this discussion. And how do they do that? Well, there's fees built into this system that producers are going to have to pay to reimburse municipal governments to help them manage the end life of this material. Now, the producers can design their own recycling program and pay into that, or they could pay the municipality to handle the recycling. But they're going to have to pay somehow. That's the idea, is to make this is, you'll hear this over and over again, make producers pay. In the beginning, it was called you've heard this over and over again. We're going to make producers pay to manage the problem. Makes sense, right? But except when you start to think about when a producer's cost goes up, they always, everywhere, all the time, find a way to pass that on to the consumer. And so ultimately, we're the ones that are going to eventually bear the burden, the cost of this system. And the question is, how much control, if we're paying for it, how much control do we have, since we're just simply removing the taxpayer element, and now that we're transferring that funding over to producers, who will then manage either the reimbursement to municipalities or the system itself. And so the question is, does that make sense? Just on a common sense basis, does that make sense to us? Producers are the folks that created the problem in the first place. Okay, so should they manage the solution, and should we pay more to allow them to do that without a lot of supervision? And so this is where EPR starts to experience some logic problems. They're not insurmountable, but we really have to be draconian. We have to be really tough. And we have to ask ourselves, is this good EPR, or is this just smoke and mirror EPR to allow producers to continue to print, distribute, and then burn plastic, which is really the most problematic piece of the waste stream. We capture 70% of cardboard and paper in New York City for recycling. We capture about 80% of bottles and cans covered by the deposit system, the bottle deposit system. What's really problematic, besides organics, which we don't collect, food scraps, effectively, is plastics. The recovery rate on plastics, very low, and very problematic, because when we collect them, are we really recycling them, or are we just sending them off to Covanta for burning? We don't know how much is really recycled and how much is disposed of via landfill or incineration. So this is where we have to step in as citizen advocates, as policy analysts, as voters, and say, I want this kind of EPR versus this kind of EPR, and you can't trick me into supporting the greenwashing EPR that is really not very helpful to our cause and to the environment. So I know this is complicated, but
and smarter people than me and Matt, and I don't know, sorry Matt, have been tricked by the other bad EPR, I have to say. So it's important to really, the devil really is in the details. But
that's what I was going to ask for really quickly, if you didn't mind going a little bit into the details of what now is coming into play. I'm going to address something really quickly though before you jump into that. One of the things I do want to point out that was said before. So for example, this idea of the rich not holding themselves accountable. I think, for example, we have this cleanup series that's happening in the Bronx, and who is sponsoring it? Amazon. And we know that they are really large contributors to the packaging waste. So I think it presents a unique opportunity for us as a SWAB to say, hey, can we have a conversation about packaging in a real way that's intentional? Not talking about it for the cameras and for the world, while we do know that it is important, because our waste is being polluted in the global south, right? Us in the global north are creating all of this waste, and instead of dealing with it, we're shipping it away. So that's one of the reasons why here at the Bronx SWAB, we really also talk about what does it look like for local processing, right? What does it look like to invest in local infrastructure to create maker spaces that are able to upcycle this material into things that can be used? How are we able to set up kind of like little mini different material for the art centers around the entire city? And you don't have to go all the way to Queens just to do it, but where are we actually allocating the space or allocating the resources to supporting a local community being able to have access to these resources that were deemed for trash or waste, but that actually, because we save them, Anna does so much work with the trash walker. Like, there should be places that we are housing to save this stuff, where people can have access to it for free who wanted to use it for art projects. There's just so many different things that can happen. So I think that it's important for us to really imagine, when we're talking about the plastic waste, one, reducing it. That's the first thing, right? But then what do we do with what we already have, and how do we handle it safely? And I think that those are all ways and things to consider. And right, we didn't realize Amazon was sponsoring the cleanup series. Yeah, well,
Right,
and that's exactly the point that I was making.
But that's a key, that's a good test. And the test is, hey, Amazon, we would like you to come to meet with the Bronx SWAB and have a conversation about what Dior's just said, versus, hey, we'd like to be engaged in busy work cleaning up our own community from the mess that you're partially responsible for making. Let's see how far you get with the first choice versus the second. And that's the sniff test, right? So that's like, if it doesn't sound right, and the response in one area is opposite the other in the other area, then you're on the right track, right? You're on the right track.
And thank you.
Little tests.
And thank you, Amazon, for sponsoring it. But what are you doing to sponsor it? Are you paying? No, you're asking for volunteers to come out and clean up. That's what you're asking for.
They're paying.
So let's engage in a conversation.
They're paying free Yankee tickets. But
exactly. That's what I was going to say. The free
Miranda
Yankee...
would like to say something.
Oh, please,
That's what I was going to say. They're paying for the free Yankee tickets. But I would hope, one optimistic person would hope, that while they're there, they're seeing some of their own packaging that is in the trash. That's part of the litter. You have to
show it to them, though. You have to show it to them.
Because I remember when I did a cleanup with Bronx River for their Project Waste, which is the boom, one of the booms in the river, and H&M was there, right? And so I was like, oh, isn't this interesting? H&M is participating in the cleanup. And so I specifically showed some of their bags. I was like, hey, look, there's one of y'all's bags. Oh, look, there's one of your hangers. You know, are you seeing this? Because you were part of this litter. So that's the thing. Like, we just gotta like effectively show them that they're part of it, because thank you for, you know, giving people free tickets to come out to want to clean up. But at the end of the day, after they get their free ticket, are they still going to want to clean up? And Amazon, are you doing litter cleanup besides, you know, these series? Like, are you cleaning up in front of your own depots? Are you cleaning up, you know, with your own workers? I don't think they think about all of those pieces. It's just a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
You got to call them on it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to engage them in conversation that evidences that, hey, we got to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I appreciate, thank you for raising that, Miranda. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, like having these conversations and kind of raising these issues and collectivizing our efforts in order to amplify it. I'm like so inspired now from this conversation. We haven't even gotten to the nitty gritty, but I already am like, okay, where's the hip hop song that's coming out of this? Like, I'm like, all right, how are we going to teach people about EPR in a way that is digestible and can be consumed in a way that makes sense? So, okay, so let us move it along. So we know all of the different ways that plastic costs us. We have talked about it in many different ways, not just in our dollars and what we're actually paying for, but also with the environmental impact and the health concerns as well. So one of the things I do want to point out and really ask very specifically, I'm going to kind of move this along. This is also very direct. Thank you, Cafeteria Culture, for giving us some of these visuals to help us along with explaining this. So I think one of the things that's also important to emphasize, as Miranda had mentioned in the chat, is like there is no way. And so at the Bronx SWAB, it's really important for us to be able to address like the sanitation concerns on the ground, but we don't want to just address them symptomatically. We actually want to get to the root and say, well, what is causing this problem? And can we put our energy behind stopping the bleed as opposed to fixing up the wound and trying to bandage it later? So a lot of times, especially around organics, you will hear me talk about local organics processing capacity and being able to handle what does it look like to process the waste here. There's so many people in New York City, and we really create an insurmountable amount of waste, like daily, not even just annual, like just every single day. So it's really important to try to teach habits and the culture of what it looks like to reuse. And the biggest thing that I always try to tell folks is just like, keep the wet stuff out the trash. That's why I'm like here to try to be like your organic queen. Like if you can keep the wet stuff out the trash, like that's a big step in a direction of really trying to even get a cleaner stream of recyclables that can actually make it to the other end. So, you know, it's, again, some of us are into this stuff and we like geek out about it and we have these lifestyles, and really it's about how do we inspire those around us to hop on the train, but also to connect to it enough where they can understand where they may have a particular buy-in.
Right.
So I want to point out really quickly that these are the different, thank you to Alyssa for making this diagram for us, but these are the different facilities that exist around the Bronx. They are waste transfer facilities and their recycling facilities as well that exist. So we have a lot of, as you can see, they're taking up our waterfronts and they have really long-term leases on the land. And yeah, residents do not have access to the waterfront as a result of these waste transfer stations. And we know that they came as a result of the landfill being closed in Staten Island. But I want us to really understand that as we're talking about solutions in the future, it's going to look like us having conversations with these facilities about yeah, just what it looks like to reimagine new uses for them collectively with the community. And I think that that's really what we want to keep putting our energy behind. So the more that you stay connected with the work that we do, the more that we are able to show up in those moments when we have these conversations and have this fight. So if you don't mind, I would like it if you all could please talk to us about the legislative process coming up. Like, where are we now with EPR, and where are we going?
Okay, wait. This is the bad bill. This Todd
Yes.
Kaminsky. That's the
Yes,
bad
it is.
bill.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So this was out last year. We fought to get it out of the budget. Basically the governor put it in the budget. Then Todd Kaminsky it was basically the same as the governor's bill, and he brought it in. He was trying to put it into the legislative process, and we worked hard behind the scenes and getting people to call, and all that money that was behind this bill did not win out. It felt like after we won, it felt like, and Dior, you were a big part. I mean, you went up to Albany
All the
to
way up
help get it
Albany.
out, and it was like we had started a union in Amazon and Staten Island. It was a victory like that because of all the money that was against us, that we were up against. But we did it. I mean, everybody collectively.
Well, we started with a public hearing,
Yes, we did.
and that was really important because New York State legislators and the legislature did not want to have a public hearing downstate. They didn't have any public hearing on this actually at all. And we said, what? That doesn't make sense to us. This is really going to impact New York City, because New York City, first of all, has a very viable recycling infrastructure. And we thought that this bill, as it was written, would endanger that infrastructure. And so we had a public hearing. We had a public hearing, and it was extremely effective. So that's how we launched.
And in the public hearing, the Department of Sanitation testified,
NRDC.
but also NRDC testified, and the various SWABs
NYPIRG.
testified. And NYPIRG testified, and Beyond Plastics testified. So lots and lots of people. Oh, Dior, is this a link to the hearing? Oh, good. Yay. So yeah, so listen to it on double speed and slow it down when something's interesting to you. But we also have, we could send you like transcripts of it too, people's testimony. So that happened. We got that out of the bill. Todd Kaminsky is retiring come the fall. Before the end of a legislative session, but it didn't get into this legislative session, Assemblymember Engelbright proposed an EPR bill that is the strongest we've seen in this country. Really,
Legitimately the strongest.
Yeah, legitimately the strongest. Yeah, and it has all
right,
those elements.
Can you put a link to that? That's what I was looking for. Is like, where's the link to the good one?
Yeah, to the bill. Okay, hold on a second. Let me get that. So Engelbright proposed it, and here's the Assembly bill. He proposed it. It's just going to be gathering support until January, because January is when the new legislative session starts. So we need to get as much support as possible, especially Carl Hastie. We really need support for this bill, because in January is when it starts, and that's when it's going to get real, because there's going to be a competing bill. We're guessing, unless we can get enough support before then, and that it doesn't even have a chance. But we have to continue. But it's like Big Brother in reverse, right? We have to let them know we're watching. We have to let them know I think Miranda said, yes, need to vote this year for state seats. That's right. We need to vote for state seats, but we also need to call them. They want to hear from us. We need to call them when they're like, wait, what? And when we were meeting with them, we were also meeting with 350 Brooklyn and other organizations who were making massive amounts of phone calls about it. And they were like, oh yeah, I've been hearing a lot about this. They have 1 million bills going across their desk all the time. So when they hear a lot of calls about one thing, they do take note about that. And so this is a bill that sounds great on the surface. I mean, I was talking to somebody about it and said, you know, now everybody has microplastics in their body, and this happened on the watch of producers, and the producers are in charge of everything. She was like, oh, I don't like that at all. She was a co-sponsor of the bad bill.
Yeah,
So-
she was. We were in that was a very surprising meeting. You would be very surprised how little many of these legislators know about the bills they sign off on, and they wait for lobbyists and constituents to set them straight. And
Yeah.
this is basically why what you all do and what we do is so important, right? So we can't really endorse a bill so much as the policy that the bill represents, and we'll get into that later in this conversation. But we wanted to compare the two, what good EPR looks like and what bad EPR looks like, some of the signs that you can look for. But I'm sorry, Ron.
No, it's okay. So the process is we're trying to gather as much support. We're trying to make as many phone calls as possible to our legislators, and it's most effective when we call our own legislators. So if, you know, whoever your assembly member is and whoever your senator is, it also has Senate. There's a Senate sponsor, Senator May from Syracuse, a woman, and she and Assemblymember Engelbright have proposed basically the same bill. Same thing with the bigger, better bottle bill, which we also highly recommend. It's just expanding the bottle bill, updating it, to number one, improve capture rates for the the materials that are often discarded as garbage.
Word, because a lot of it goes to garbage. And I
Yeah.
actually saw something earlier today. I have to read it, but it was talking about the black plastic. I forget what the
Oh,
it was,
I know.
but
I just learned about that.
I
It's the most toxic. It's
really unfortunate. There's a lot of that
I
out
know.
these days.
Think
And
about all your cooking spatulas and stuff that are
the-
for Teflon. Well, also Teflon.
well, yeah,
So,
that too.
yeah.
Everything, everything, and I think that's what's difficult, right? Is that there's always these newer products that is sold to you as convenient and meant to make your life easier, and then later on we find out that it's toxic and harming us and polluting our environment in order to make our lives easier and more comfortable.
Yeah.
Here in the global north. So,
But of course, that's what they said. That's a selling. They're
yeah,
selling us, right?
well, that's really what it is, and that's why we have to have these conversations, but we also have to have these sort of alternatives present. So for me, if we're saying, okay, we're going to get rid of some of this plastic stuff and reduce it, then I'm going to say, yeah, okay, some of the alternative is reach out to Miranda. Miranda's going to help get you right. And what that looks like, okay, go down to, whatever the maker center is. And, you can learn some ways about upcycling these materials. We'll get some of this stuff locally so that it never even actually has to leave the borough because we're processing it locally. So, all of these things matter. And so we're coming up on time. So I do just want to really quickly, if we could close out and think about the ways in which the Bronx SWAB, right, specifically can get involved. These are not all of them. There's many other organizations around the Bronx as well, but that are kind of tapped in and connected to the work that we're doing. So if you all could tell us, I know that you spoke a little bit about, okay, we talked about voting. We talked about actually connecting with the assembly members. So first thing I would say is who are the candidates, right? That seem like ones to look at and be able to ask these questions. I think also as it relates to our current assembly members, we could actually try to host some sort of event where we do like a call-a-thon, or we'll have a day that will, have everybody kind of come together and we can just call and send emails and tweet and, do all of the fun social media stuff. We can do it live in person, or we can do it not live in person. I've seen it done multiple different ways, and to be quite honest, I like them all. There was one, I don't know if Phone Zap is the same one. Yes, the slides that can be available to you, but we'll also be posting the recording of it that will be up on the YouTube page, most likely by this evening. So there will, yes, a sample script, all of the things, Miranda, all of the things, right? And I was a part of one before where it was like, just like a stack where it was like, okay, call the next person after you did yours to remind them to do theirs. And like, it kind of like just went in the document like that. But I'm thinking more like live in person, like we're on Zoom, we'll have some time to talk with each other, then go do our action, come back with each other, go do our action, and then like kind of split. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning. And I think, you know, I'll present it to the rest of the SWAB and see if that feels like a good idea. And if folks want to get behind that, we'll see if we can plan that. Yeah. I
want to say also that we have tomorrow night, we're doing a talk on plastic packaging and foodware threats to human health by MD, MPH, and she's also a JD. She has a million degrees.
Wow.
But she works with cafeteria culture now. We're so lucky to have her, and she has put together from studies, not just from articles, but from studies, a really informative and accessible talk about like black plastic, for instance, like, you know, all of that stuff and how it comes into our bodies. So it is an everybody problem, but because we want to get everybody's NIMBYism, we want people to be like, wait a second, I can't escape this by sending it to a marginalized neighborhood. Are you kidding me? Right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of a kickoff for this. And after that, we're going to talk about EPR, and we're going to come up, we'll have a script and an email, like a how-to at the end of that we can share. If you don't want to come, I can also share it with you guys, but I'd love to have you if you want to come.
Yeah, if you can send it, and then I think that's something that we could actually put out on our stories and maybe send out an email to also kind of inform folks about some upcoming actions and events. So on August, so I have the details in front of me, August 17th, it's a Wednesday, August 17th at 10 a.m. on City Hall steps is going to be a zero waste rally. So that's for all of the bills that are for mandatory organics and having recycling centers in each community district, and having reporting standards for a lot of these zero waste goals and initiatives. So
yeah, that's a really important package of bills. We really should get out there.
Yeah. So, you know, the EPR bill that we're talking about right now is a state bill. And the bills for the Zero Waste Rally are city bills, important to distinguish as we think about making laws and what bodies of government and who we are actually calling in order to make progress. There's also the Bronx Cleanup Series, which I'm sure a lot of you may know about already, but it's through the Sanitation Foundation. And there's a couple that are actually coming up. There's about 3 more left, I think, in the series. So there are, if you go to our link tree on the Bronx SWAB, the link is there in order to be able to access that as well. So yeah, I just want you all to know about some of the events that are coming up or some action items that you can be tapped into as it relates to some of these issues that we're discussing. So outside of that, are there any other ways that we can get involved that you can think of?
Well, I mean, really making calls. You can write op-eds, place them in your newspaper, you know, local papers, even your local papers. You can post about it. You can share the news with friends. And Dior, if you could make a rap about it and make it simple, that would be great. That would be the best probably thing we could get.
but I also think we could reach out to our own city council because when we did our public hearing, we sent a letter of recommendation. By the way, all 4 SWABs supported the public hearing, so it was an all SWAB event. And
so thank you all.
We all got together. We sent a letter to Sandy Nurse, and Sandy Nurse used that letter to alter the resolution that the New York City Council was asked to produce in support of EPR. And at that time, we were being pushed, the city was being pushed to support the bad Hochul bill. And Sandy pushed back a little bit on with some of the recommendations that we made. So I think that some support from the city council and getting it into their heads, this really will impact the city, and also encouraging the DSNY to come speak to us about EPR intelligently. Like, we don't want to hear we're going to make producers pay, because we know a
Right.
lot more actually than they know in some cases around this.
Or that they're saying they know.
Well,
Whatever it is.
We want this DSNY to get paid as well, and the previous bill that we're looking at would make that almost impossible. The new bill will make that very much possible, and not impossible, but possible. And it's really important that we tell them that we know more about this than they think we know. So
Right.
we have a motivated base of voters and people that really care about this. So we've had a lot of very positive impact, and I would like us all to work together to continue that positive impact on this process. I know it's difficult for us downstate in the city to affect things that are in Albany, but we can do it.
Excellent. Rhonda, are you putting those 2 links to the bill in the chat? Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay. I felt you were doing that, so I just wanted to ask to make sure that the person got those links and that information.
Yeah. And the Senate
great.
bills are the same, just so you know. I'll put the Senate bills in there too, but Senate
When you say they're
EPR.
the same, what do you mean?
They're the same, exactly the same bills. Nothing's been altered.
The assembly bill and the state bill, they're basically carbon copies.
Yeah, the Senate so basically the Senator May reintroduced the assembly bill into the Senate, but it's the same bill. They needed that, and we're trying to gather support, more people to co-sign. And Carl Hasty, who's in the Bronx, is the speaker of the assembly. He is really needed.
Yeah.
And the more you guys can lean on him, the better. But
I think we'll dig into as a SWAB. I think what we can do is with this newer bill, and one of the things I think is really important is that, we're not policy people, and we've broken the bill ourselves before, like the CCIA. We did an activity with the Environmental Justice Committee, and we basically read through the bill. Everybody took their pages, but it's so dense with the language, and then there's questions. I feel like we always come away with more questions and clarifying questions than anything. So I think what will be helpful for us, and in full transparency, is that the folks that are writing this bill, or I don't know, I feel like we literally have to go line for line, and then once we get to that line for line thing, we need somebody to be able to just answer our questions from the bill directly.
Okay, have I got an event for you? So the Brooklyn SWAB, I'm the legislative chair of the Brooklyn SWAB, and I'm not a bill reader at all. I just started being one. Because it needed to happen. This needed to happen, and otherwise I needed to make sure not.
Because it means nothing for somebody else to tell you or give you their 10 points about what you should be paying attention to if you don't look through it yourself to see what are the things to be paying attention to.
Right.
So we're going to have a bill reading series of workshops, right, between the Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Bronx SWAB, or is that? Yeah,
and Queen SWAB. We're inviting all the SWABs to come and look at these bills. I can send everybody an email who wants to come. I just put my email here in the chat. Cool. And I can send you all an email with all the materials, including an easier to read version of the bigger, better, bottle bill and the EPR bill. So we can talk about it.
Do me a favor and just shoot me a direct email and send me that, because those are things that we can put up on our link tree. So as people are trying to explore learning more about EPR, these are things that they can just have access to when they just click on.
We'll go line by line, paragraph by paragraph.
Yeah, we're going to go through it together as a.
So August 2nd is when that meeting is happening.
Yeah. And what time? Do you remember what time it is, Matt? I think it's.
No, I don't.
I think it's 7:30.
I have to check our minutes.
Okay.
Can I ask real quick? This is Miranda. Is there a TikTok? Is there a TikTok on this?
No, but
No,
Yeah.
Miranda, you're gonna make it.
Can you make it?
You mean my teenager is gonna make it for me?
Your teenager's gonna make it for you. Somebody. Let's talk
You know
about
what?
some Bronx SWAB TikToks to get people learning about this
Yeah,
stuff. I love
because-
that.
Right.
Cafeteria
I love
Culture's doing a TikTok, is in the middle of doing a TikTok about skip the stuff.
Yeah. So I think I know about that one because me and Rainey have been talking. So I think that might be advantageous. As well as I put in the comment in the chat, NYC Climate Week is soon approaching.
Yeah.
And I could try to get myself and the other local shops maybe to host something and we talk about this because it does impact the local shops, right? Because local refilleries are trying to tell people reuse your packaging, right? Quit buying brand new packaging. And this is a way to be educating people. So
Oh my God, if you hosted that, maybe we could, I mean, it depends if you already have a sponsoring entity, but like the SWABs could
No, we
lift that
don't.
up. Well, so then you could do it as a SWAB. You could host it
Okay.
for the SWABs. Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Right?
but I'll talk to my kid about once I look through the stuff that you send out, Rhonda, my kid owes me a couple TikToks. So that will happen. That will happen.
Good. Okay. I like that.
Perfect. I love that actually, Miranda. So let's talk about that, especially for Climate Week. I would love for us to be intentional about what that's gonna look like. That's like, what is it, the first or second week in September?
Yeah, it's coming up because I just got Bernard's sustainability group and Columbia are doing some stuff. And that's another thing we should I know that's a Manhattan SWAB, but Bernard's sustainability might be reaching out to Manhattan SWAB because they want to do some stuff and those students are riled up. They want to make a difference.
And my daughter's going to be going there in the fall.
Oh, good.
Congratulations.
Yes. Excellent.
So, but from
Miranda,
a Bronx
can you
SWAB,
forward me that?
Yeah, I can.
I would love to see that. Okay, great. I think that this is lovely for our next push. I think we were talking about visiting another recycling facility or waste, thanks Miranda, or waste facility. We're doing a tour, but I love the idea of this kind of being an event that we can push for September as well, coming off of the event that we did in a couple weeks ago. So alrighty, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you for being present. And yeah, let us continue to find a better way to use materials. Good night.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
What a great group of people. Thank you.